Hey, what's going on guys? It's Tom Mason here, back with another video, and today we are out in the field to do a few tests with the brand new Nikon Z6. Now I was very lucky to get loaned one by Nikon UK, so cheers guys, and today I'm going to get out and do some first impressions with the camera for some wildlife photography. So I'm down in my waders and ready to get in my local lake, because hopefully there'll be, some water birds, waterfowl around. We might get a few images, but as the sun is starting to come up, it's time to get in the water and see if we can get some shots. Right, well, first things first, I've got to get myself kitted up, set it out on the tripod before I get in the water, because you never want to get into unstable ground before everything's attached to the tripod and you know it's all securely fixed down, because there'd be nothing worse than tipping it over and losing your camera in the water. But today, hopefully, that won't happen. But this is a good chance to talk about my first impressions with the Z6. Now, when I took it out of the box, I was actually really pleasantly surprised by the ergonomics and the build quality. As a long-term Nikon user, a D850 shooter, D500 shooter, having that ergonomic quality to my camera is really important, especially when you use large lenses like my 300 2.8 and stuff like that. I'm used to quite a big, hefty camera, and so moving over to a smaller system, I really wanted that ergonomic feel to be the same, and I must admit, I'm really impressed. The camera is fully designed to have a really nice firm grip. That grip is really deep and it seats very well in the hand. And the whole feel of the camera, when you put it up to your eye, it's really nice because that viewfinder is extended from the back of the camera. That means my nose doesn't touch the screen all the time. And of course, when you're using a touch screen, that would be really annoying. But overall, it feels really nice. Also, even though we've lost a few buttons on the back from my D850 or something like that, there's still loads of buttons that you can customize and get to be what you want. And I feel that my hand fits everything where I need it. I easily seat my fingers around the dials, and I can reach that AF on button and a little joystick to move my autofocus point. That largely is most of what I need. Video button on the top that of course now we can go straight into with the flick of a switch. That is just really cool. And so far everything feels really nice. The body itself is really solidly built. It's got some heft to it that, if you're used to bigger cameras, it's really nice to have. Some of those other flimsier cameras, they just feel a bit cheap really, but this really does feel like you're getting your money's worth. It really is very nice indeed. I've seen that a couple of reviews have said that the two front buttons are difficult to reach, and personally I don't find this at all. I just seat my hand round and I can easily press the FN1 or FN2 button. That's really handy in the way I've got it set up, because I can change my autofocus mode, my cropping mode in just the flick of a switch. That is really cool when you're working out in the field. The FTZ adapter as well fits very solidly with my F-mount lenses, and that's really one of the big draws for me for this camera. People would say, Tom, why do you want a Z6, a Z6 when you've already got a D850? Well, for me, the video capabilities are the large draw of this camera, and it's what I'm really after. So if this can mount to all of my Nikon lenses, but give me advanced video capabilities, that's going to be exactly what I want. But today I want to run it through some tests and see if also it's going to make the perfect backup camera for when I only want to carry a lighter load when I'm working out in the field. So let's jump in. Just going to put my teleconverter in my top pocket so that I can easily reach it whilst I'm in the water. Extra memory card and battery I'll also throw in. And one thing that's really handy about the Z6 is I can actually use my D850 batteries. Didn't know if I'd be able to. They're probably not as recommended as the newer batteries. Also, you get USB-C charging with the new batteries that you don't get with the old ones. But the fact that I can use them backwards compatible means I'm only going to have to carry one charger. That's going to be very nice indeed. But right, let's get this hooked up to the tripod. Make sure it's very securely fitted on. Always twist it and see if it's going to come out, because sometimes you think you've seated it, but actually you've caught the plate, and when you move it, it comes off loose. That is something you don't want to happen when you're in a lake. So tighten that down nicely, very good. Check my balance is all right. Right, ready to go. Let's see what we can get. So I've been out shooting this morning with a Nikon Z6 since sunrise, and it's time for a little bit of feedback and thoughts on the camera. Now for me, the Z6 was really all about video. I wanted the chance to have a video camera that I could attach to all my f-mount lenses in order to get video of wildlife to add into my videos and stuff like that, and also have one camera that would provide being able to shoot me with continuous autofocus as a single man shooter, really handy, but also act as a backup camera for my f-mount for photography as well as video. Now, of course, I always knew that already owning a D850, this wouldn't be my primary still shooter, but I wanted to know if it would be a camera that would work well enough to be my second backup body when I'm doing my professional jobs. And you know, from what I'm testing in the field, it's really looking quite good. The autofocus of the camera works a little bit differently to what you've got on the SLR. You do have to work between multiple modes to get the best out of it, and that's not too much of a problem. It's just going to be a bit of a learning curve. When I'm doing anything kind of ground level or, you know, single point autofocus, I switch to that to pinpoint birds and sit in different situations. But when they start to move and I want to get flight shots or anything like that, I need to switch to that pattern autofocus in order to lock on a bit faster and track those moving subjects. But with those two autofocus modes, it works very well indeed. And with my 302.8, even with the 1.4 teleconverter, this morning I haven't had many problems. I had the 302.8 bare to start with, and that was working really quite nicely. But then with the birds being a little bit more distant, I wanted a bit more reach, so I added the 1.4, and I thought to myself that that would slow it down quite a lot. You know, it does with some lower level cameras, but actually it still performed really well. Tracking birds as they flew straight towards me, and with that pattern autofocus, it picked them up and I could get multiple shots perfectly in focus as they flew down the lens. That's really, really nice. You know, it was just working with black-headed gulls this morning and different gull species, but you know, it's a really good test of the camera's performance. In terms of how it locks on in moving water, that worked quite well as well. Not too many instances of it pinging off to the background or anything like that, as long as you were accurate with that point. And that's something you're going to find with a DSLR anyway. If you're not very accurate in the way that you position your autofocus point, it is going to move off to the background. But largely it worked really quite nicely. In terms of the frames per second, Nikon advertised that you get 12 frames per second, and you do in the high extended mode. But it kind of functions a little bit differently to how you might experience that on like a D5, for example. You're not getting that continuous like dum 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 of the you know, of the mirror lifting and that blackout. What you actually get is a momentary kind of lag as the frame captures all the shots in quick succession, and it shows you the picture, so you get this kind of like stuttered effect as it shoots all the images. It can seem a bit weird when you first use it, but after a while getting used to it, it really works quite nicely, and it gives you that advanced higher frames per second. But for me with this, largely I'm just using 5 frames a second, because for most of what I'm shooting, that's absolutely fine. And testing it out, I do quite like to see the blackout, because it reminds me that I've actually taken a picture. Whereas that kind of stuttered effect, I'm going to have to get used to it, but I know there's going to be certain circumstances, especially birds coming in and moving and stuff like that, where it's going to be really nice to use. Another thing that people ask about is battery life. Now, I've been shooting all morning, probably about 3 hours or so now, and I've gone down, you know, a little bit on the battery. And that's completely fine. I'd expect that from my D850. Of course, not with a battery grip and everything, but if I was using a single battery, so that's not too problematic. And of course, you're running the EVF the whole time. So unlike with DSLR, you don't have that option to go completely kind of like energy free and just look through the viewfinder with the camera turned off to save battery life. You know, you've got to use the electronics to at least see your image, and as much as that can be a bit annoying in terms of like that reduced battery life, but the advancements and the extra features you get are certainly worth it. And of course, you know, I've used what, 1 drop, probably be 2 drops by the end of this of the battery life. That's no problem whatsoever for a full day's shooting. Just carry a spare battery and you're going to have more than enough for working in the field. So I don't see that that's going to be any issue for me long term. Another thing that of course I got mentioned the other day is the update to having that eye autofocus. That's going to be quite nice. I think as well, if in the firmware they can tighten up the autofocus continuous mode just to make it even more consistent. And also what I love is the pinpoint mode. So the pinpoint autofocus you get in single shot, but you don't get in autofocus continuous. So I'd really like to have pinpoint in continuous mode, because for those really accurate kind of like small inner landscape shots, it'd be really quite nice to have. But you know, overall, from a first impression, I'm really enjoying the Z6, and you know, over the next couple of days I'll be out shooting even more to give you more impressions of how it's working in the field. But right now, as the light's still pretty good, I'm going to crack on shooting and see if I can get some more images of these gulls flying about, and trial this autofocus a little bit more. But you know, to get started, I'm really enjoying shooting with this, and I certainly think it's probably going to be adding to my bag in the coming year. But right, I'm going to get shooting and hopefully get a few more images. Well, I think that is enough time in the lake this morning. I can't feel my legs, and so it's definitely time to get out. But just finishing up the video, you know, as a first impression, and this is all this video is, I'm really excited by the Z6. The autofocus looks promising using those different modes. The image quality we'll test a little bit later, but in terms of how it works, functions and feels, it feels to me a lot like a Nikon camera. That's exactly what I wanted it to be. I think that it can be a backup camera for my still shooting, that should be really nice. But hopefully, as I test it more over the next few days and week, I'll be able to get some better impressions about how this might fit into my workflow. Now, if you've got any questions about the Z6, be sure to drop them in the comments below. Got this for another week or so for my testing phase. So if you've got any questions, let me know. I'll be sure to try things out and see if I can get you some answers. I'm going to be shooting a few more videos on the Z6 and to give you my final thoughts and impressions over the next couple of days. So look out for those. But of course, as always, if you want to see more wildlife photography content, be sure to drop a subscription and join me in the future. Over the next year, there's going to be lots more videos. I'm really excited for this channel. But right now, I'm going to get out of these waders, get some tea in me, because I am pretty cold. Right, see you in the next one.